Okay, do you ever listen to a podcast that's just like mind-blowing and you can't stop thinking about it? And let me back up a little bit. So, on my coaching team, we've got a lot of amazing coaches that are fired up for the year. We just had our annual meeting. They're like ready to serve. They want to help people. They're like going out and getting it done. And I asked them what their personal fitness goals were, and their personal goals were for nutrition, what programs they were doing, kind of their own personal goals. Then we talked some about business goals, and I had a friend that is kind of a mentor friend. We have kind of, calls together, and we encourage each other, and we kind of iron sharpens iron. And she shared with me her personal goals, and then she said, I want to know what yours are. This is not a one-way street. And I was busted. I was totally busted because I'm really good at leading other people to set goals, how to track goals, monitor goals, get after things that are important to you. But something in me was holding me back from doing that. And just as happenstance, a friend of mine recommended a podcast like 3-4 months ago. And I put it in my podcast library and never listened to anything. You're going to see a pattern here. But the cool thing was the other day I was out walking the dog and I pulled it up. And what was the first thing? Self-sabotage. And the funny thing was it coincided with the day that she called me out. And she said, what are your goals? And I didn't respond to her. This was on a Marco Polo. And I was like, what are my goals? Why can't I set my goals? Why don't I know what I'm doing here? And so this podcast like blew the lid off. It opened my awareness to some things that were going on in my own personal life and my own belief system that might help you. If you've ever tried to work towards something and you haven't gotten there, maybe you've started a book and you haven't finished, maybe you started a cross stitch when your first child was born and now he's 12 and you never finished it, there's some self-sabotage that's going on. And it might apply to your health and fitness goals. It might apply to you getting your next job. It might apply to you really focusing in on improving your marriage. So if this speaks to you, I want you to give me a thumbs up or a heart or something. Let me know that this makes sense, and that I'm not alone, because I don't want to be alone in this. But here's the first point that this podcast speaker, and I'll drop a link to the podcast below, but she said that self-sabotage is not a circumstance thing. It is a by choice thing. Ugh. I mean, that's like crap. I mean, no one wants to believe that. We want to believe that the reason we can't accomplish fill in the blank is because of our circumstance, that we have no ownership in it. But when we start to understand that we are doing self-sabotage behaviors on purpose for a payoff, we really have to take accountability. It becomes very serious as to what's going on then. And we are creating unnecessary problems for ourselves in trying to achieve that. And by creating those problems, we don't achieve our goal. And so we think, we weren't going to make it anyways. Sound like you? Does that resonate with you at all on any goal at any point in your life? So this is really cool. She pointed this out, and I'm a geek. I talk about being a nerd all the time, but I love the way the brain is developed, the lizard brain, which is all that emotional, irrational, you want to be angry kind of things. And the prefrontal cortex, that higher level thinking, that's when we get to goal set. That's when we get to dream. We get to be visionaries. That's the higher level. That's the spiritual part. So that's the part where we can set goals and plan ahead and accomplish them. We want to be up here. We want to live in that. That's the fun part. And we should honor that because it's such a privilege to be able to do all of those things. But what do? I say we because I'm collectively preaching to myself, but we interfere with our goals. And how do we interfere with that? The first thing that we do is we procrastinate. Why do we do that? We put off doing something we should do, whether that's getting our workout, whether that's meal planning, whether that's working your job, whether that's applying for a new job, whether that's reading a book on spiritual things to improve your spiritual life. We procrastinate doing those things because we fear failure. If we don't get to it, we already knew we weren't going to get to it. We weren't going to make it happen. So we were going to fail anyway. We buy into that belief. We take acceptance of that lie. So we procrastinate. Number 2, buffering. I love this term. This is like the best term ever because y'all know, like, if you're watching a YouTube video and it's buffering, like it's spinning and like you can't. So that's that like taking up that space. So her definition of buffering is anything that we do in place of. So we overeat, we overdrink, we over Facebook, we over Netflix, hold on, I got the dog in. It's like Cujo over here. We overdo those things because, you were supposed to be working towards your goal and you're like numbing out. You're taking a pause, right? But you're really numbing out. And I do that a lot. Like, I think social media has allowed, I'm on social media right now. You might be buffering instead of doing something you need to be doing, but that allows you to spend time in a false pleasure when you should be pursuing something that you might alternately need to be doing for your betterment, for your health, for your marriage, for your parenting, for your sanity. Okay. So number 3, so that's procrastination, buffering, and then not showing up. So maybe you said yes to a lunch date and you just don't even show up for it. Maybe you said yes to one of my challenge groups. You're in one of my fitness groups and you don't show up in the group. That's not showing up. That's not something to be ashamed of, but that is something to think about and to address. And number 4, how many of us quit something because it's not going fast enough? Another problem with the internet, right? Like, it's just, we are in this microwave society where we want things quick, and we want instant results. And if I start a plan and I don't get results within like 10 days, then I'm out. Peace out. I'm going to the next plan. You got something that works overnight, we're going to quit until we get to that thing. And those things all interfere with your progress. They all interfere with your mindset, but they can be changed. And this is what I love. So how do you know if you're a self-sabotager? That's not a term, but we're going to make it one. Here's how you know if you're a self-sabotager. Number 1, I'll ask you a question. What are your big goals in life? And if you don't have any big goals in life, that's a pretty big indicator that you're a self-sabotager. You're not owning that future, your future, as kind of like a piece of real estate, something to be managed and worked towards and cultivated and tended and nurtured and loved. We're just accepting what comes to us as a circumstance. Y'all, I'm preaching to myself. I've done this many times. But if you don't set goals, then you have no stake in that success. You don't really have stake in the failure. So you sabotage everything by not setting a single goal in your life. All right. How else could you know if you're a self-sabotager? So lack of awareness. If you're somebody who, somebody asks you a question and your standard stock answer is, I don't know. Where do you want to go to dinner? I don't know. I'm kidding. That's a general one. But not taking stock of those emotions and kind of knowing what's driving you. And then number 3, if you focus more on past energy, what you didn't accomplish in the past, or reasons why you aren't going to accomplish something this time because of what your past experience was. So I do health and fitness groups. I help women feel confident, make progress. There's no perfection in what I do kind of as a coach, but we work on just the empowerment of taking back those choices. And one of the things I like to ask people is, what did you do before you got into this group? Give me your experience. What worked? What didn't work? Why didn't it work? I love to have that as just a stepping stone, kind of to figure out if it's a fit for them and what might we work towards. But over and over, I hear, this is my last ditch. This isn't going to work. Nothing's worked in the past. And so you start to hear those things. And now, having listened to this, I can recognize that as self-sabotaging behavior. That gives us tools. Y'all, recognizing something, being aware of something, that has power. That gives you permission to change what we're doing in life. So how do we overcome, right? Because we don't want to be on Facebook all night. So we have these belief systems. I like to call them, if you're a gospel believing person, big T truths. What does God say about you? Little T truths, what we say about ourselves. You can just call them lies. What lies have we grasped onto? We believe we will or we won't achieve. Whether you will or you won't, you've already believed that thing. So it's not as simple as the Pollyanna. Just believe that you can. Just believe you can do it. It's not that easy. So remember those 4 things. You have to start recognizing those. Am I procrastinating right now? Am I buffering right now? And if I'm buffering, what am I buffering from? What's that underlying emotion? am I not showing up? Am I not showing up for my marriage? Am I, and I'm saying this, me speaking about my own behaviors. Am I, instead of watching football, it's not football season, so I can call this out. Instead of watching football with my spouse, maybe I go up and watch Netflix in my own room. Am I not showing up to try to be present with that, to try to build bridges and connection? And am I quitting because it's not going fast enough? What are those things? So when we recognize the thoughts, y'all, we have so much power in recognizing our thoughts, taking thoughts captive. That's a spiritual thing, but it's also just a life thing. I gave this analogy in one of my fitness groups just today. And I said, I like to imagine my thoughts being a barge or a boat. You can make it serene, canoe, whatever, floating down the river. If we see them, we acknowledge them, right? So that's self-doubt, worry, anxiety. I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough. I haven't accomplished enough. They can sail on by us. We don't have to get in the boat. We don't have to bring the boat into harbor. We don't have to do anything with the boat. We can kind of just acknowledge it. We see that it's there, but we are not going to take part in what the boat has to offer. If we can train ourselves to think of our emotions that way, think about the progress you can make in life in whatever you are pursuing. But we have to identify those emotions and become aware to start to do something different. So become aware is number one. Number two is to decide to do something different on purpose. We started this talk by saying that self-sabotage is not a circumstance. It is on purpose that we choose these behaviors. So we can also, if we decide to choose negative behaviors on purpose, we can on purpose decide to do something different. There you go. So we can pay attention to what leads us to those behaviors. We can pay attention when we start to buffer. Y'all know when you're doing it. I know when I'm doing it. But paying attention to it instead of stepping into it and accepting it, two different things. We can plan for the urges. I share this little tip with my group. 4 to 6 p.m., kind of the witching hour. Don't have toddlers, but I have a preteen and an 8-year-old. So it feels like it a lot of times. And a dog. Feels like it a lot of times. So in that time, if I'm home, I like to go for a walk with a dog. So if you live in my neighborhood and you see me out walking, that's why I'm walking at that time, because that's when I would normally buffer. That's when I would normally numb out. That's when I'm like, I cannot take the steady conversation with a preteen any longer. So that's what I'm going to do. And so if I plan for that, I can plan for the emotions. I can see the boat going by and I can go for a walk with the dog with a nice bottle of water. And we can plan how we're not going to give in to those things. We can set that up. And sidebar, this isn't a plug for my group. This is a plug for friendship. If you're having trouble identifying those emotions, or if you're having trouble planning out how to kind of find that alternate behavior, reach out to me, because I'd love to talk to you about that. I kind of love helping people orchestrate and systemize that part of things. So when we take control of our emotional management and we understand that emotions are there and they're going to be uncomfortable and it's okay to be uncomfortable, get uncomfortable being uncomfortable. I had a boss one time say that. And we don't get in the trap, that mindset, that thinking that life should be comfortable for us all the time. When we start to say that, we start to say things that lead us down a spiral that we don't want to be in. For example, I deserve this new car. I deserve this treat. I deserve to take a break. I deserve fill in the blank. And when I say break, I don't mean because you are genuinely dog bone tired. I mean like, I did dishes, or I don't want to do the dishes. I'm just going to go binge out on Netflix. That turns into self-pity. And when we do that, what are we taking agreement to? We're saying, we tell ourselves that we don't need to show up. We need to procrastinate, that it doesn't, whatever we're working on, whether it's the dishes, whether it's spending time with our spouse, whether it's planning that healthy meal, whether it's pushing play on that workout, whether it's making a different choice, we tell ourselves that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter right now. It doesn't matter at all. I don't matter. I'm not worth it. So those repeated behaviors, and again, I'm preaching to myself, but when you repeat those behaviors, your spirit just identifies with it. So you believe it and you enact it. and you self-sabotage. So let's experience collectively. Let's experience those emotions. Let's take captive those emotions. Let's watch those barges move on down the river, right? Let's scrap the desire to be comfortable all the time. Let's stop procrastinating. Let's get to work. And it doesn't have to be something that the world calls meaningful. When I say get to work, some of you have wanted to read a book cover to cover in a long time. Let's get to work on that. Let's get to work. Let's stop procrastinating. And our desire to be in control of the universe creates self-sabotage in relationships. So that's probably a good one for another day, because I'm an expert at that. But y'all, we don't have to self-sabotage. We can take awareness and take control of these things. You can only have freedom in goal setting in whatever area of your life if you're willing to say, boy, I do have some negative patterns. I do have some behaviors that are stirring that I want to unwind. And please know that you're not alone in Facebook land. You have community. And if you don't have friends that you trust, reach out to me, but you do have friends. I hope this was helpful. Gosh, I mean, it was like mind-blowing for me, self-sabotage, right? I want to stop doing that. I want to make progress, and I think we all do. So on that note, let me make progress on dinner. Love you guys.